Hello, and welcome to Successville. I'm Sophie Williams, and I'm trying to learn more about success by having conversations with my most successful friends to try to find out what it is that we're really working towards, and if success ever feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside, or if the whole thing is, in fact, secretly a scam. This is the first episode of a 10-episode season 1 that I've recorded and edited myself in the spirit of challenging myself to step out of my comfort zone and do things in public that I'm not already good at. Because apparently for success, growth is important, which I hate. The only thing I want to flag about this episode is that while we were recording it, I had COVID, but I didn't know it at the time. So there are a few moments where I sound a bit breathless. As you'll see if you're watching the video version of this, Ben and I recorded in different places, so don't worry, I didn't make them sick. And I think I've taken out all of the weird breathing because it's just not that kind of podcast. Although season 2 could be if I don't figure out how sponsorship works. Anyway, that's enough for me, and it's time to hear about Ben Pechey's successes, their struggles along the way, and why writing books reminds them of looking at plastic food in a restaurant window. Hello, lovely listeners. It's me, your friend and host, Sophie Williams, and this is Welcome to Successville, the podcast where every week I speak to a different successful guest to ask what is success, how do you know when you've got it, and is it really all it's cracked up to be? This week, I am thrilled to be joined by the icon that is Ben Pechey. Ben Pechey is a non-binary writer, presenter, content creator, TEDx speaker, LGBTQIA advocate, diversity and inclusion consultant, and author. They have written and produced content for The Guardian, Forbes, Cosmopolitan, Women's Health, Refinery29, and Diva magazine. They've worked with major brands such as Malone Blahnik, Condé Nast, Doc Martens, the NSPCC, Virgin Atlantic, and many more to educate and improve awareness of the LGBTQIA+ community. They are the author of the Book of Non-Binary Joy, picked as top self-help book by Forbes, and of Your Gender Book. They're also an ambassador for diversity role models. Ben is a TEDx speaker. Their talk focused on ensuring that trans and non-binary people can find joy every day. They were also featured in Diva magazine's and The Guardian's 2024 Power List of the top 100 visionaries blazing a trail for LGBTQIA+ women and non-binary people. Ben, hello, and welcome to Successville.
Thank you for having me in Successful, Sophie. It's lovely here.
Thank you. You built it yourself.
That's incredible.
So, like everyone who has amazing guests, and every time you go on a podcast, I'm sure, people always start by just reading off the bio. And I know that for me, at least, it always feels kind of weird. Like, are those really the most important things about me? Are they the things that make me me? So you've just sat there and heard me read out your bio. How does that make you feel?
A bio it's a really weird thing. Basically, like when you write a bio, you're like, what makes me sound the fanciest person possible? I edited that before I sent it to you. I was like, I'm going to put some new good things in there. And so it becomes like your like greatest hits. And then when you have it said back to you, it's like, oh, is that actually that important? Is that actually that impressive? Is that a marker of how I want to be remembered? And I just find the whole bio reading process, I find it a little bit cringy to sit through it. I find it a little bit uncomfortable because it's like, I actually don't want to have all these achievements just read out in front of a room of people. It can sometimes just feel a bit like, look at me, I'm showboating, aren't I special? Where's my round of applause?
Yeah, I find it uncomfortable as well. And it's weird, and it's a good point that you make, because we do write them ourselves, right? We know what's going to happen. We know that they're going to get read out. And like you, I spend time just being like, a little bit of this. You know, when something new happens, when I get published in a new magazine, or when something cool happens, I'm like, okay, I'm going to pop that in my bio. But then when I sit and I have it read out, I just feel like, oh, this is weird.
Yeah, and also like as we pop those things in our bio, we know the behind the scenes. We know the interactions. We know we've put in certain publications, but we know maybe we weren't paid for that. Maybe we had to chase 5 times to get that. We know what actually went on. So sometimes it can feel a little bit shallow. I don't know if that's your experience as well.
Yeah, it deeply is. And that's something I'd really like to touch on more as we go through, because I think that idea of knowing what happens behind the scenes is so important. So recently I had something that got into Forbes, and that was really cool for me. And I remember being jealous of you when you had something in Forbes. But for me, it didn't feel like how I imagined it was, because I knew I hadn't been paid for it. I knew that a PR team had set that up for me, and like this sort of behind the scenes knowledge, it's hard to take away. And I really want to talk more about all of this and about all of your amazing achievements that we've just sort of run through. But before we get into your professional life, because we're going to be talking about success, I think we should probably start at the beginning. And I wanted to ask you about your idea of success, or your relationship to success when you were a young person. Like, did you do well in exams? Did you win awards? Did you have an idea of what success for grown-up Ben might mean or look like?
No, and growing up is maybe a very different chapter in that story if my life was a book, because school wasn't something that I had very comfortable access to. It wasn't something that was open for me. And so I lived under two sort of barriers to success. Number one, I had the world's cleverest sister. So every teacher that I was underneath had already taught a very clever version of me, and I just didn't live up to it. I remember one teacher telling me, why couldn't I be as clever as my sister? Good old education system in the UK. Yeah, that was something that was fed back to me. And then the other half of it was I was bullied so much that I felt that it was much easier just to go underneath the radar. And that actually meant not trying, not raising my hand, not asking for clarification if I didn't understand. And so, no, I didn't necessarily do that well in exams. I don't exam well. I just can't focus. I'm not good at sticking inside a box is just not my vibe. It's just never been. So success was never the narrative. I never really hoped for much. I don't know. It just wasn't something that I thought of, because I think, like many marginalized people, I was just surviving. I was just hoping to get through it. So I remember, like, at 18, I had no plan. I sort of dropped out of going to university, didn't think there was anything that I could do. And I was just like, okay, let's just do our best. Let's go out and get a job and just hope for the best. So success was never my goal. My goal was just to get by, I think.
I'm sorry that you had such a bad and hard time at school. It's something that we've spoken about in little bits and pieces before, and you absolutely didn't deserve to be treated that way, either by other kids or by teachers. That's not something that you deserve. And I'm sorry that that was your experience. I want to touch back on being 18 and not having a plan or not having an idea of success. I think the pressure that we put on young people essentially is pretty outrageous. I think we tell young people who are 14 and making their decisions about what subjects they're going to do, and that's going to, impact and change the rest of their lives, we tell them. Or if you don't go to uni, or if you have different plans, I feel like we give young people such immense pressure to be not only successful in terms that they haven't had a chance or an opportunity to think about yet for themselves. We tell them that this is their only chance, and if they don't get it right now, everything is going to be terrible for them. Did you feel that sort of pressure as a young person?
Yeah, that pressure was huge. I actually really viscerally remember when I was doing my A-levels, everyone was talking about open days, university open days, and I genuinely, I turned to someone and was like, what's an open day? And they're like, well, we've already been to like 5 or 6. And I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And then they got out these university perspectives, and I was like, what? You get catalogs about education? It had passed me by. I was so busy focusing just day to day. So I panicked. And I was like, well, everyone expects me to go to university. My sister's just going to university. She's at Russell Group Uni. She's doing history. I was like, shit, what am I going to do? And so I was like, drama, because it was one of my A-levels. And I was like, I'll go do drama. And I put it all off. I put the open days off. And then I had to go and do interviews. And I did it all. And I had this moment of clarity of like, this is not for me. This is not what I want. This is not who I am. I don't know about you because I know what your degree was, but for me, drama school, university drama, I was not one of those girlies. I could not hack it. I didn't want it. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to drop out. And I dropped out. And everyone was really cross with me about it. And I was just like, well, I don't want to make a mistake. And the mistake at that point was tied to debt. So this was 2012. So the Lib Dems had absolutely failed to cap university fees. And so we were looking at $9,000 a year for something I didn't want to do. And I just was like, pump the brakes. And that's when my sort of early foray into higher education was just like, I'm not doing it. I'm just absolutely not doing it.
It's so interesting for me in loads of ways because I didn't know you had this experimentation with drama at uni moment. And so for listeners who don't know me, my degree is in theatre. I did what Ben decided wasn't for them. I endured 3 years at a kind of hybrid university drama school kind of situation. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. But because I am, and we'll come on to this, slightly older than you, I graduated in 2008 into the middle of the financial crash. But that does mean that I had less expensive university tuition fees, essentially. And so even though I really hated it, and I really got bullied at university, like I didn't have any problems when I was at school or college, but in university, I had an absolutely terrible time. It didn't ever once cross my mind that I could drop out, that was an option for me. And I think one thing that I really admire about you and that I think about when I think about you as an adult, because I obviously only know you as an adult, I think about someone who knows themselves and someone who knows their mind and someone who will not do something that doesn't serve them. And so I think it's really interesting that you dropped out because you knew it wasn't serving you. And I think that to me is an indication of young Ben being the Ben that I know and love from, university age.
I don't know if I knew it was serving a purpose. I knew that I just couldn't handle the discomfort that it caused me. It wasn't like I had one of those like Gwyneth Paltrow sliding door moments. I didn't see a future. I just knew that I couldn't handle what that path would bring. And so I think I took 3 years out. So I did go to university at 21. That was after working in a shop and being like, well, nothing's going to happen here. All I can do is work out sale percentages very quickly. I have no skills. And that was when I decided that actually, if I didn't do something, nothing would happen for me. And that's where I was like, actually, I want more. Because I think in retail, you see people that have lived a life on the shop floor. And I didn't necessarily want that for my future.
So it sounds as though that time between dropping out and starting again with something else was also really valuable because it sounds as though it gave you an image of what your life could be. And whilst that's totally valid, that wasn't what you wanted for yourself long term.
Yeah, it was just a big opportunity to be like, hang on, let's change the narrative. And I totally took things in a very different direction.
When you talk about dropping out and just like taking that time to sort of think about what you want, I feel like I see these glimmers of this person who I love so much. It's really fun to see that in you as a young person as well. But I think when we talk about success, generally, most people, I think, tie that to their professional life. And when you joined, when we started this podcast, I read out that bio and that big list of your achievements. But would you be able to sort of tell us just a little bit about what your working life is, what you do?
What do I do? What do I do as my job? I had to explain this to a friend of my grandma the other day, and it was a really weird experience trying to explain what I do to like someone who's never really worked, never really like explored what hybrid working lives look like now. And so I don't have a title. I have like 7 interconnected professions. And if I had to put it like into a little sentence, I would say that I'm a change maker. I would say that I'm socially and consciously aware of everything that I do. I try in everything that I put out to change the world a little bit. And so that originally looked like starting my own website. That looks like thinking about what to do with my voice. So I have a fashion degree, and part of my fashion degree was we had to have our own website as like a portfolio. But I started that a little bit earlier when Brexit happened, because the day of the Brexit vote coming in, and I very much voted Remain. It was something that I was really passionate about. Even with my small audience then, I was so strong in how much I campaigned, getting people around my age to be like, actually, we would like to stay in the EU and all the benefits that brings us. And the day that vote came in and Britain decided to leave, I had this real sit down moment with myself of, nothing I want will ever be given to me. Nothing I want will be easy unless I go out and do it for myself. And that's the day I bought my website domain and I bought my can. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start and do something. And those early blog posts on file, they're absolutely awful. And I have never archived anything. So they're out there. If you want to scroll, go and find them. I'm not telling you the URLs. That's your business. But that was like my first foray into actually publishing under my own name. And at university, we very much encouraged that our degree was not just our degree, it was everything else that we did outside of it. So I tried to fit in as much as extra stuff as I could. And so I applied on this like Facebook advert to become a fashion writer for a fashion website. And within like a month, I was attending Fashion Week in London. And I was like right at the back, standing like craning over people, but like a season later I was being like ushered onto the front row because I had audience traction of like 48,000 a day. People were really reading the stuff that I was writing. Yeah, and that's what I was doing. So I was a fashion editor at 23 whilst I was at university. So I had parallel titles to my head tutor as a student. So I was doing kind of the same thing. Not that my tutors took it seriously, not that my tutors thought that it was worth the same thing as them, because they were very much print-based and I was very much online. And so they just dismissed me wholeheartedly. But I remember being at the same shows as the same people that were trying to teach me what to do. So, you know, I was having that kind of experience. And it wasn't really until COVID that I got a grip on what my career could be. I tried post-uni to get the job, the big job. I interviewed for, I don't know, 25, 30 things. And like I even nearly got a job working for Trini London from Trini and Susanna. I sat in the townhouse. Yeah, I sat in that townhouse. I was interviewed. I didn't actually get to meet Trini, which is a shame. But like that's how close I got to lots of things. But none of those things worked out. And I just kept writing and writing and writing. And then COVID hit. That for some reason, everyone being at home, lots of things converged. We had a lot more social awareness because no one could go out and do anything. And so the uptick in speaking about LGBTQI plus issues became really huge. And I don't really know what happened, but lots of good things happened all at once. And that's when I really started what I would call my career of writing, working with publications, writing books, of working on video projects, getting massive brands asking me to like create pride content for them. And I haven't really looked back and I haven't really stopped. And it's pushed me to a career that is lots of different things that I love to do because it allows me in some way to change the world just a little bit.
And I think you do change the world in little bits and in big bits. But it's really interesting to me to hear about this sort of middle period when you're sort of doing stuff, but not getting that traction that you're looking for. Because you and I met probably in about 2020. And when I met you, you seemed to me to be a very already fully formed professional in this space. You seemed like a real grown-up doing your own thing sort of confidently and successfully. And so you and I met because we had the same talent agents for a while, and we got introduced through them. And I remember them saying, "Oh, Ben would like you to interview them," and me being like, why? Why on earth would someone who's like that be interested in me? So it's really interesting to hear that that was just the beginning.
I felt the opposite of those things that you've just described. I felt so like fledgling. I felt so overwhelmed by everything and everyone else. I felt like 1 minute away from it all being taken away from me. So I signed a book deal in 2020, and that's when stuff started happening. I don't know why, but in a world that's moving away from print, a book deal seems to say you've made it. And realistically, have you? Have you really? But I did not feel successful. I felt like, and to a certain degree, Sophie, I still feel like a fraud. I do not feel like I belong. Nothing feels permanent, and it all still feels very slippery. Like at any second, I'm going to lose control. And I think you were the person I admired the most that I had an access route to. I was like, how can I legitimize this rinky dinky little thing, my first book? I was like, how can I make this seem genuine and special and important? I was like, find the genuine and special, important person that says it's good. And I'd been courting your online image for a while. I'd really been like looking up to you because by that point, you were nearly 2 books deep. You were, or maybe you even were 2 books deep. I saw you as, I don't know, this megastar. Like you were who I wanted to be. You were where I wanted to be. And that's why I sort of was like, I want Sophie Williams. And if I don't get Sophie Williams, I'm not going to be happy about it.
That's so funny to me because, yeah, you saying that like you felt like it was not very secure and it could all get snatched away at any time. That's absolutely and entirely how I have always felt and still absolutely feel. And like you, I've done these things and I've got these books and I've got this, this number of followers or whatever. It all feels as though it could go away at any time. Or on the other hand, none of it feels like it's real. None of it feels how I would imagine success to feel. And I think that's why I'm having these conversations now. And that's why I've started this podcast. And this is why I want to bring in to talk to people like you who I think are so successful and seem to me to be so grounded and so like, I think you are unstoppable. And so I feel incredibly proud to know you and to call you a really good friend of mine, because I think you are already super successful and I can see that you're only going to become more that. I feel like you're only going to put down deeper roots and you're only going to do more and more. Whereas for me, I feel like completely untethered, completely unsure about what I'm doing, completely at a loose end. And it's so interesting to hear that you feel like that as well.
Yeah, no, like every job feels like it's going to be the last one. My last book launch, we finished it and I was like, that could be the last time that ever happens. I was like, you really have to savor it and enjoy it. And we walked home, my partner and I, we walked home from that event and we got yard sale pizza, which is the best pizza in London ever. And we got to the hotel room and I cried and I cried and I cried because I was like, what if I never do that again? What if that never happens for me again? Oh, I said I won't cry and I'm a bit emotional, but success is so tied to me as a person and what I want to leave behind. And so everything feels like it's just going to be snatched away from you. And you see people that are on the same level as us, or maybe even bigger, and it just looks so easy and they look so comfortable.
Yes.
And like, you can't imagine that Jodie Comer, for example, an amazing actress, she's not on the red carpet being like, oh, fuck, where's my next job coming from? But maybe after we've both had this very similar feeling, maybe she is. But no one talks about it.
Maybe. I think you're right, because I think so much of this idea of success and how we've both spoken about each other is really about other people's perceptions. And I think when we talk about success, we almost never talk about what it actually feels like. I feel like a load of people have like a checklist or a to-do list of stuff that they want to do, but I don't think many people have that same sort of thought about, and how will that make me feel? Who will that make me as a person?
I think for us, like, I don't know about you, but I always have goals. I work so hard to get there. I never work on, and who will I be when I get there? I never work on how will I feel when I get there. And what you don't realize is that as soon as you're there, you set your sights on something else. For me personally, there's never a chance to breathe it in. Like, you get to the top of a hill. People climb mountains, I assume, for the pleasure of doing it and viewing what they see when they get there. But if I were to do that and to explain my success with that metaphor, as soon as I get to the top, I'm like, where's the next mountain? Where are we going? And that's the hardest part about success, because it never feels permanent. It always feels temporary, and it makes enjoying what you have done pretty much non-existent, right? There's no chance to stop and smell the roses, because you're like, well, if I don't hustle, there won't be another one of this, or I won't get to that point. And that for me is, I think success is very lonely because no one sees it how you see it. And it's uncomfortable. The first one is always the best one because you didn't have it. But as soon as you have it, you want more of it. And that feeling is hard because, especially for you and I, like I was thinking about it as we logged onto this podcast, as a podcast and there's a Black woman and a trans non-binary person, we're already knocking at doors twice as hard to still get no's. And that's what makes it even harder for us, I think. And I think that's why we assume it's always going to be a no as opposed to a sure, why not? And I think that's maybe something that we haven't unpacked either.
Yeah, the more I talk to people, the more I think, oh, everyone must feel this way. But also, everyone in my community, pretty much, everyone who I have this sort of closeness to, or who I think I can speak honestly to, and who I think speaks honestly back to me, they are generally people with some kind of degree of marginalization, whether that's race, whether that's gender, whether that's sexuality, whether that's physical or disability or neurodiversity or whatever that is. Sort of, I think we have both sort of built communities very intentionally in those spaces. Maybe I need to get just like a cis white male tech bro on and see if his sort of feelings about success are different to ours.
Yeah, I think that would be an absolutely mind-changing conversation, because some people genuinely don't think they have to ask for stuff. Some people just think they can have it, and I don't feel like that. Like, it's like when I signed my book deal, I was like, are you sure? Is it real? Can I write this yet? Like, it felt very much like I still had to ask permission. And I think it will always feel like that. It will always feel like that.
It's sad, isn't it? Because success for me would be getting to a stage where I feel like I can relax.
There is so much more toil behind what we do. There's an added pressure to it, alongside all the traditional pressures of, I don't know, wealth, follow account, like doing it by a certain age. It compounds.
There's so much stuff that you've touched on that I want to come back to. Stuff about follow account, stuff about this idea of the temporariness of success, this horrible feeling of having to keep on keeping on. Because to me, it feels like if I don't keep on keeping on, then nothing I've done in the past is going to matter, because it's like you're only as good as the last thing that you've done.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Before we get into those things, which I do think are important, I want to talk to you about something that is a very big marker of success for a lot of people, and that you've done not just once, but twice. And that's get a book deal and write books. So you've mentioned a few times that felt like a success to you when you signed that first deal. Is that something you can talk to us about? Like, how did that come about? What did that feel like? And was the process like you imagined when you signed that deal?
So I've talked about it like it's a success, but it didn't feel real until 3 years in. So I signed my first book deal August 2020. But because it was during COVID, I never went to publishers. I never sat and saw that particular editor. I've met them once, and that's it. And so it never felt tangible. It didn't feel how I thought it would feel, because you see people like, I have a book deal, and they have a picture of them in an office with some cheap Carver. It's not even Prosecco, it's Carver. And they're signing some crap paper that's their contract. I never had that. And it never felt real. So the first month after being a signed author, I was like, well, I can't do that yet because it doesn't feel real. And so I think one of the hardest things about your first book, it won't feel real from my experience until you see it in a shop. And that's when it's like, oh, that thing I made is now a thing that people can buy. And that really changed it for me. But I think my own perspective was until my second one came out. And my publisher actually invited me. They were like, we want to send out some signed copies. Would you come in and would you do that? So my publisher at that point had buildings on the Riverside opposite the This Morning studios. And it's this huge, beautiful, huge building. And it felt really special. And there's books everywhere. And when we got to my publisher's floor, my books are in their display. That felt the most successful I have ever felt as an author. And every time I sign on to do a new project, so like I'm doing an event at Waterstones later this month, I keep doing things like this because the pay for it's not that great, just so you know. But anyway, that's another story. But I was like, I keep doing it. And I said to my partner, I was like, because it makes me feel like a real author. And he was like, but you are a real author, Ben. I was like, it just doesn't feel like that. And it probably never will.
Yeah.
Like I was in the shower getting ready for this, and I was like, people right now could be in a bookshop buying my book, interacting with me, and I'm not there and I'll never know about it. And that's the weirdest thing, because they're sat there going, oh wow, isn't this person amazing? And I'm just washing my hair.
Having this book that exists outside of you is so funny, I think. And I've noticed that whenever I see my book somewhere, I feel like I own it. So if I see my book somewhere, I feel very entitled to like pick it up or to like, you know, hold it as though it's a thing that's mine. But it's not mine. Someone else owns that. And it's a really strange feeling, I think. And that feeling of it will make me feel like a real author, I think is so common. So I was meant to do a talk with another author recently, which got cancelled because we didn't sell enough tickets. But the reason that we both wanted to do it, and it was meant to be like in Waterstones, and it's not Waterstones' fault that it got cancelled, but it was going to be in Waterstones. And he's someone who I think of as an established author. And he said, will you do this event with me? It's in a bookshop, and that's going to make me feel like a real author. And I was like, what?
Isn't it so weird? Yeah. That real author feeling. And I think a book is so different to other stuff, because like I can't put my TED Talk on a shelf. I can't give, like, I don't know, an article I wrote online. I can't give that to someone I want them to be proud of me. But you can with a book. It doesn't feel too twattish to be like, oh, it's my book. No big deal. Like with other stuff, it can feel, because we have to push ourselves out there. It can feel like we're always asking people to buy into us. We're always asking people to believe in us. But like with a book, you can just be like, well, there it is. Done now. Fine.
And I think it's because of the social kudos that's given to books and given to writing books. And I think also that's partially why publishers can often get away with treating authors so badly, because there's this legacy idea that we are lucky to be in that space, that having a book is one of the most important, amazing things that you can do. And we're very lucky that they've given us the opportunity to do that. And so they should be able to work with us however they want. Whereas in reality, if we don't write the books, they've got nothing to sell. They've got nothing to edit. They've got nothing. So we're the people who are taking nothing and we're turning that into a product that people can sell. But talking about having your book in a shop, that is such an amazing moment, I think. And it's something that I didn't get for my first two books. My first two books came out during COVID, during lockdown. And so there was no going to the shop and there was no seeing it. And it really felt like I didn't get this moment. So you didn't get to go to your publisher to sort of have that moment of signing and all of that. I also didn't. I've still never met the editors or the teams behind my first two books. Never met them. Never going to.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting, I think, because I still felt like I needed and wanted to do all of these sort of recognized social media moments. You know, we all do that like unboxing video, but like, here they are. And we all do that like, oh, I've just seen it in a shop for the first time. But what we don't often talk about is sometimes when we see it in the shop, it's because we found it at the back of the shop and we've moved it to the front of the shop. And then we're like, oh my God, look, it's here. Because I, at least, I can speak for myself, I want that moment of success. And even if it didn't happen, I want to feel like it did.
Yeah. And because my books are a bit more niche than yours, you don't see all the times I go into bookshops and they're like, oh no, we don't have it. You'll have to order it online. And it's like, okay. And you just want the ground to swallow you up because sometimes you're like, I'm the author. And it's like, no, we don't have that here. And that's a moment. And my partner stops me going into every bookshop because I'm like, I want to try. I want to see. But I just stopped doing it as much because, you know, the disappointment is just horrible.
That also happens for me, but it's the other way around. I don't want that disappointing moment, so I like to imagine it's in there, but I don't go in to check. Whereas my
Right.
partner will be like, oh, I'm going to go and look in foils. I'm like, don't look in foils. I know
Don't
it's
look
not
in
there. I
foils.
checked on their website. I think one thing that people might not know about you is that you are still, I think, very young. So we're talking about you've done this TED Talk, you've had 2 books out, you've got the social following, you've done all of this. But I still feel as though you're very young and you've done so much more than I had even imagined doing when I was your age, which sounds really patronising, but I promise is said with deep
I know
love and
it's not.
affection. But because you're so young and you've already done so much, and in, I think, a shorter space of time, because you went to uni later and so you sort of compressed it into the last few years, sometimes I do worry about you, because sometimes we have conversations and you're saying, I want to do this and I want to do that and I want it now and I want it to, why isn't this happening? I feel like you maybe compare yourself unfavorably to people who are much older than you and who've had time to make stuff happen.
I've not really talked about this before. I never really planned to stick around all that long.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see post 30 as an existence. I actually saw it for a long time as an exit, which is very, very sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm definitely not in that position anymore. But what I saw was, and I think 30 has such a huge weight to it. Pre-30, you are in the best position to do anything you've ever wanted. And socially, we're told post-30, well, good luck to you. And I turned 30 this year. And by 30, I had set out a list of things that I wanted to do. And there's only 2 things that I've not done on that list. And I genuinely couldn't imagine what I would be when I got there, if I even would be there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, for me, an impetus to get everything that I wanted done. And I thought that it would either fix me or would be enough to say, hey, that was my legacy. And realistically, now I'm nearly 30 and I don't plan on going anywhere. In fact, I've had a few things that have made me go, actually, hey, this is my life and boy, howdy am I going to live it? And now I realize that I have done a lot very quickly. And that now feels scary because the last 3-4 years have been very, very condensed. What do I do with the next entire decade? What do I do with that? And I don't know what I'm going to do with it. But I know for a fact that I am a very impatient person working in industries that are soul destroyingly slow. Conversations that last 2 or 3 years when I want it done in 2 or 3 weeks. I work quicker than most processes can handle. It always upsets people when they're like, oh, a book that must have taken you ages. I wrote my first one in 6 weeks. I wrote my second one in 2 months. Done to done, like start to finish. There was like a prep period. There's always that like proposal period. If you write nonfiction, you prepare your proposal first. And I find that I want stuff done quicker, sooner, because I do compare myself to other people. I find it frustrating what others have that I feel like I should have. There's a childish nature to the I want inside me, and success actually really wants you to want. You have to want something. No one is successful and they're like, I don't really care. It's like, oh, you care. This matters to you, and it hurts, and it's painful, and it's soul destroying. And the comparison of it all is debilitating. Like somebody announcing something that I don't have, that I'm close to getting. I've never admitted it, but it will put me in bed. It makes me ill. It's so hard. And I always find it so funny to me because actually, Sophie, in terms of age, we're very close. We're very, very close.
No,
I think,
you're a
yes, we
baby.
are. Yes, we are. What is this? 6 years between us? If that? I think
Yeah,
there's about
6-ish.
6-ish, and that's nothing. But I feel like everyone is snapping at my heels are babies. I feel old in my category. I feel like I wasted all of my time because I see people that publish books at 22 and I see people at 19 getting these huge brand deals. And I'm like, well, I'm at home for the third week in a row with nothing in the inbox. It's hard work and it's a very uncomfortable thing. And yeah, I've got somewhere very quickly by accident. And now I'm dealing with the repercussions of that, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you for trusting me with that. And the more we talk, the more I realise just how similar we are. Because it's not something that I speak about a lot, but I have spoken about it once online. I also didn't plan on being over 30 ever. I had such a terrible time at university. I felt absolutely bullied. I felt really incapable of doing anything. And so, yeah, that was a mental cutoff point for me as well. Just like, I'm going to get there, and then there doesn't need to be anything else. But I think I approached it in a different way to you. And that meant I actually didn't do very much before I was 30. I didn't do very much before I was 30. I was the chief operating officer and a chief financial officer of a media agency. But aside from that,
that's a lot.
I didn't really do anything. I didn't realize that I had any creative abilities until I was into my 30s. I didn't write anything. I didn't know I could. I felt like my time at universities doing theatre was a waste. Well, not a waste, but I just didn't feel like it aided me in my life at any point. I think I got my first book deal when I was probably about 32 or 33. I don't know. In 2019. So yeah, it's interesting that we had sort of similar feelings, but yours pushed you to do something, and mine just made me feel like, well, nothing matters really, so I can just do whatever I want. Another thing that was really interesting, what you just said, was about comparing ourselves to others.
Yes.
And I think that the sort of work that we do, or at least the online elements of that work, and that could be like the content that we make that's just online, or the content that we share online about our offline lives, like book deals, like TED Talks, like moving house, or whatever any of that stuff is. For me, recently, that has really led to some feelings of inadequacy. And that's really surprising for me because I'm very careful about who I follow and what I follow. And I think one of the first times we met in person, we were doing an event for some brand about FOMO and about like checking out. And I was like, I don't get FOMO. I'm very cool and secure. And then since then, no, I absolutely do. Do you feel that being online a lot plays into a feeling of whether you feel successful or not?
100%. Because we're all in a world where everyone is showing their best bits. And the point is, we do that too. We only turn the camera on really when things are doing like okay to good. And then we expect ourselves to experience other people's best bits and just be like cool about it. I hate it. I hate it. I have to continually stop looking at things. I have to continually take myself away from that to be like, actually, that doesn't matter. Like, what was it most recently? People going to the Bridgerton, the Bridgerton premiere. I was like, I could do that. I know those people. I've been in the same room with 6 of those people. Why am I not there? And it's those moments of like, first of all, that premiere gets you nothing. There's no success tied to that premiere, but being at stuff like that would feel good.
It's so funny that makes us feel like that even when we know that it would get us nothing, even when we know, and maybe some other people don't know, you don't get paid to do stuff like that. So we would be paying to get ourselves there. We would be spending time making small talk with people who we don't necessarily want to make small or big talk with. Then we'd pay to get ourselves home. You're not based in London. Maybe you'd pay for a hotel. Like, there's so much that goes into these things, but we still want it, right? We want to be asked at least.
Yeah. To turn it down because it's too expensive, or to be like, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. That's what I want. But to not even get the opportunity, I hate it. I hate it so much. And I remember when we did do that thing about FOMO, I felt like the biggest fraud in the world because I was not being paid. I was doing a full day of work. I did 4 hour and a half shoots. I was absolutely exhausted. I remember one of the episodes was filled with really famous TV people, and every one of them had like an assistant and a PR. And every time we asked a question, we had to reset and retake. And it was just, and I was just like, why am I here? Why am I doing it? And I got given all the questions that morning, and it was just like, well, I'm a fraud. I'm an absolute fraud. Yet, if I was asked to do it again, I'd say yes, because I felt special.
I think so many people, when you see people with social media followings, when you see people going to events, or not even just going to events, doing what is skilled work, like hosting and presenting like you are at that, I think they think we get paid for it. When you buy a ticket to go to a bookshop to see an author doing a talk, you presume the author is getting paid for that. They're not.
No, we're not.
When you see, a piece of content like that, digital detox, or you see someone going to an event, I know someone who is a different kind of influencer to us. They are someone who is very sort of like, we will both go on a story without makeup on and like being really normal. And that's something I've had to be very mindful about doing. I don't want to only like my face when I, painted it. I want to remember that I can be normal. I don't use filters, like all of this stuff. But someone who I know is like a more conventional influencer, and they go to a lot of events and they look incredibly busy. They look incredibly successful, I think. But when you get into it, I know that they haven't had paid work for a really, really long amount of time. I know that they're getting the bus 95% of the way to those events, and then they're calling a black cab so they can arrive and they can look as though they are sort of the person who it feels to them it's important to be.
Yeah.
And these sort of images, I can see why people make them, but it also makes it so hard, I think. It sets up that expectation that is what we all have to be doing.
Yeah. It is all a game of smoke and mirrors. None of it to none of us feels real. And that's the sad truth. And I think that's why conversations like this are so important, because actually it would help us all to know actually what that looks and feels like.
Because it feels scary, right? And it feels precarious and temporary, and I think that's why they do it as well. That person who's getting the taxi, they're not doing it because they want to or because they feel good. They're doing it because that's what they think they need to create an image of success, to get paid work, to feel success. Like, it's this really vicious circle. So I have been asking people to send me little voice messages about their feelings of success. And I have one from my friend and old colleague, Anna. And I'm going to play Anna's clip for you now.
Hi, Sophie. It's Anna Wolf here, your friend from the past. I'm loving your questions and musings about success. And I definitely have lots of thoughts about that. I definitely feel like I am a successful person to some extent, but I also think that often comes at massive costs, where you particularly, for me, I've got small kids, and I'm a sandwich carer. So success often means like a lot of compromise to my own like health and kind of sanity sometimes. I think that success looks like other people around you flourishing, and I definitely feel that when I used to work with you, Sophie, that, yeah, it gave me immense joy to see you, for example, being really successful with your books and your projects, and also just successful in standing up for, you know, what is right. So I think success looks like everybody flourishing, and obviously because of how society is and systemic structures and things like racism and sexism and all kinds of things, not everybody gets to flourish. So I would love to hear discussion around that, and I think that is really interesting. But yeah, success comes with many, many challenges. And I think sometimes success for me just looks like rest and not always doing things that are kind of productive and capitalistic, but just rest.
So that was Anna. Thank you so much, Anna Wolf, for sending me that lovely voice message. And when you said that success looks like rest, both Ben and I just started doing really big nodding. So we've spoken a lot, Ben, about sort of your drive and how much you've done and how quickly you've done it. What do you think about Anna's idea that success looks like rest, or looks like people around you being able to thrive?
I think that's important things that maybe I'd never stopped to vocalize before, but I definitely see that, you know, in terms of your success should reflect on those around you. It absolutely should. And I definitely feel, from my perspective, that the small parts of my life that are successful is then an opportunity to take people with me. I always feel the need to bring people with me, and I always try and do that with everything that I can. And I definitely know that you do that too. But the other side of that is success is being able to rest, is to not engage in the systems that have got us to where we are, because there's an idea that we're beyond it because we're comfortable. I've only just, as an adult, allowed myself to start taking holidays. And there's something about getting on a plane, which I know I am incredibly privileged to be able to do. But being able to get on a plane is like, actually, I say goodbye to everything around me. I want somewhere where I don't matter and things don't matter. That 2 weeks where maybe I won't care as much about everything else. And that, I think, is you grant yourself the gift of nothing, which is huge.
And it's so difficult. I recently went away for just like Friday to Monday. I went to Belgium, like a really, really quick Eurostar trip. And so we're recording this in the middle of June. And anytime we've spoken about going on holiday, up until this point in the year, I've just felt like it's impossible. I felt, for me, it's not been linked to success. It's just been linked to this idea that how can I go and have a good time when there's so much terrible stuff happening in the world? Like, how can I take this time off? And so for me, Anna's message is really interesting, because the question I hate most, or that I dread most when it comes to sort of interviews, is, what does your self-care routine look like? Because I've never been good at that. I've always just been like, you know, success, keep going, keep it happening, keep moving forwards. Maybe they don't want this, but I imagine they want me to be like, I've got this great, you know, fucking cleanser or whatever. Like, and that's how I fight racism every day, you know?
Yeah.
The reason I picked Anna for you is I think this idea of bringing your community along with you is really deeply embedded into everything that you do. You work tirelessly to advocate for, to amplify, to raise the voices of trans and non-binary people. And that is, I think, at a big cost to you.
Yes. I don't ever sit and think about it too much, but I don't work to undo how hard my life has been. I don't work to change my circumstance. I work to make the life of other people better, because to sit and focus on everything that's happened to me and negative stuff, I just don't have enough time. I don't have enough money to pay my therapist, but to focus on the future for others feels possible. It feels realistic. It feels like I could actually change that for someone. And there is a cost to me, because you become the person that people see as the face of it. So you always have to do more, and you always have to be on, and you always have to have a take. For example, someone I know's, they applied to the process of changing your gender in the UK is the most archaic and impossible thing, and your GP can stand in the way. And so you apply to gender clinics to start this process, and they can step in the way. And because that person knows me and thinks that I'm always on, they put up a story that immediately at like 9:30 on a Monday evening required me to do lots of work and share lots of resources with them and try and help them, because I'm not doing my job if I'm not doing my job. I'm not good if I'm not good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? It's a huge weight that you carry, and you carry it effortlessly, seemingly, from the outside. And I think that maybe people don't realise when you become a voice of something or a face of something, that sort of pressure to be always on. So after this conversation that we've had, and just in general in your life, do you, Ben Pechey, feel like you are successful?
I have two answers. Ben Pechey, the concept of who I am, they are successful. But the behind the scenes, just Ben, the person that goes to Sainsbury's and can't find sun-dried tomatoes or cries because too many things have overwhelmed them. No, I don't feel successful. The idea of who I step into at work, they are successful. But there is a huge disconnect between that entity and me as an individual.
So interesting. And yeah, that sort of goes back to what you were saying at the very start, doesn't it? About that sort of peek behind the curtain. So much of success isn't about how we feel, I think. I think it's about the brand, how people feel about or think about us rather than how it feels. Okay. It's the quickfire section. What's something that you've achieved that you think should be more celebrated than it is?
Oh my God, quickfire questions. They're so hard. Or I think getting up every day and trying is the hardest fucking thing you can ever do, because it feels impossible. Nearly every day it feels impossible. Even just to get dressed feels hard. And I think there should be way more success piled on. Like, actually, you got up. Good job, buddy. Like, actually, that deserves, like, I know that sounds really sarcastic, but actually it is a good job done, because I know how hard it is.
Exactly. Going back to that sort of COVID, like, well done for surviving, well done for existing, well done for getting up. Yeah. My next thing is, what is your secret success? So mine is actually linked to a memory with you. So I had the launch of my third book recently, and Ben was wonderful and came early to help me set up and to make paper hats, because I insisted that we needed paper hats. They were so hard to make, and everyone hated it.
And no one wore them.
I wore one, and that's
did,
what matters. It's my special day.
It's your special day.
But I had spent so long planning and prepping and getting all the stuff ready that people arrived and I still wasn't dressed. I was still wearing essentially a cozy tracksuit. And so I had to sit in the stairwell and like do my makeup really quickly. And you were like, oh my God, you've just done a great winged eyeliner sitting on some stairs in like a fire exit. So my secret success is, because I did a TED talk during COVID, no one could do our makeup for us. So they gave us someone to do a virtual session about how to do makeup, and so now I can do a great winged eyeliner. So my secret success is my TED talk taught me how to do really good makeup. Do you have a secret success?
Yes, but it's not really about my business or what I do as a person. I taught myself to cry.
Good.
Because until 2021 I couldn't really cry. I found emotional stuff too difficult. I just checked out. My family used to describe me as cold, and I think you know me as a person. I think I'm hot. Like, I'm toasty.
So hot.
And so hot, yeah.
And so cool.
And taking myself to therapy and unlocking a lot of the trauma that I was refusing to let go of I've taught myself to cry, and I'm now a very emotional person, and it actually serves me so well. It's one of my secret successes of I made myself actually feel, and that has helped me so much.
Amazing. Amazing. Next quickfire question. These are long quickfire questions, aren't they?
They are.
What is something that you really wanted to happen but never actually came through?
TV. I wanted to happen. I wanted to present on TV. I had a lot of hype people around me that were like, oh, we can make TV happen for you. Yeah. No, never happened. Never happened. I've got very close 5 or 6 times, but it's never happened. Yet.
Exactly. Yet. And then the final quickfire question is, what is something that you really wanted and it did happen, but it didn't feel as good as you imagined?
Books completely. It never feels, it doesn't feel as filling. I think books are, you know, some restaurants, typically like Japanese or Chinese, and they have those really beautiful plastic meals in their window, and they're gorgeous, but they wouldn't taste of anything. They're not real food. Books to me feel like that. They look great, but everything underneath is just a little bit fake. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm real, and what I put in the books are real, but the process around it, plastic restaurant food.
Yeah, not real food. Ben, thank you so much for your time today and for having this discussion with me. Where can people find you online? Where can they follow your work? And where can they celebrate your successes in real time?
You can follow me on Instagram. I'm Ben at BenPT. That's Pechetty. The same thing on most platforms, benpet.com. And you can celebrate my success by buying my latest book, Your Gender Book, and giving it to a young person in your life and unlocking a lot of the answers to the questions they might be having.
Thank you so much.
That was the wonderful Ben Pechey, and that is also the end of the first episode of Welcome to Successville. Thank you so much for listening and for coming on this journey with me. I'm putting links to Ben's books and their website in the show notes if you want to spend more time with them. If you also want to spend more time with me, you can also find me on Instagram at Sophie Williams Official, which is also where you can send me a voice note if you'd like to share your own thoughts or feelings about success, or if you just want to celebrate a win. I'm getting started on planning season 2 now, and this way you can also be a part of it. You can also email me on welcometosuccessville@gmail.com if you don't want your voicemail to get cut off at 60 seconds. So that's at Sophie Williams Official on Instagram or welcometosuccessville@gmail.com if you don't want to worry about being cut off. And you get bonus points if you begin your message with "Hello, Sophie," and "successful guest." Thank you so much to Anna Wolf for today's listener voice message. I love you. I'm going to be back next week when I'll be joined by Amina Hamid, the youngest woman ever to produce shows on the West End. In the meantime, ratings, reviews, and subscriptions really are helpful, especially for brand new projects like this if we want them to be successful. So if you are able to rate, review, or tell a friend, then that would be really appreciated. Until then, I'll see you next week, lovely listeners.